Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started now. I'm Natasha from the marketing team at Akkio. We're going to dive into how to use machine learning to predict content performance, lead scoring, and more. And today we're joined by Jason Huber, Director of Solutions Engineering at Akkio, and I'm going to pass it off to him to get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Natasha. So yeah, this is going to be great. Really, we have a couple really good use cases. One from a company that uses our product, of course, and has helped us out in a variety of ways. And then our own internal use case. And then I have an example data set that I'll walk you through, showing you how we can actually use this for something like lead scoring in your environment using your data. Now, pay attention, because you're going to leave here with the opportunity to play with the data I'm going to show you. The data I'm going to show you is completely sample data. There's no PII or PHI involved with it. But pay attention, because we're going to give you a couple of links that you can use to then play with that data yourself in the platform after the webinar, during the webinar, if you want to, as we kind of wrap things up. So let's get started. So this is kind of what we're looking at. In the past, sales teams, marketing teams, product teams, manufacturing, you name it, procurement, they're all looking at data in the past, right? We're looking kind of in the back and saying, could we use our data for? What could have we learned is the idea that they would say. And then they would say, well, if we had done this, it would have turned out better. And then they would change their actions, and hopefully the result would be good. And that was useful. That worked very well in a lot of ways. And this thing kind of predictive analytics came out, and we started to change that view of how to look at data and using it to predict the future. And what that means is the data that you already have in your system, you have in your CRM, you have in your SEO, you have in Google Analytics, where all this data that we have stored across the organization, and sometimes outside of our organization that we can pull in, weather data or, environmental data or situational data, things like that, becomes extremely, extremely valuable. And we've seen that in a variety of ways. So we kind of have this hockey stick effect that everybody likes to point out, because it looks like a hockey stick, but that data is becoming very, very important. So I want you to think about is, what sort of data do you have access to today? And then how can you get that into a system like Akkio to start to make the predictions like we're going to do together? We can pull data in from CSV, Snowflake, of course, Salesforce, HubSpot, you name it. We can pull your data into the system. The next question is, what do I want to do with that data? How can we leverage it? So that's what we're here to talk about today, and get some real value out of your existing data. So I kind of mentioned this before, but I love this photo, partly because I'm in Arizona. That kind of looks like Nevada a little bit, but that's okay. We're looking in the past. So the analysts in the past were using tools like, Tableau, Power BI. I come from Spotfire, Jaspersoft, which are, it's installed tools that you use, and you have servers that you have to put in, and then they connect to your data store. Those were all restricted to looking at the data that existed, and it was backwards looking. So we had charts, graphs, real-time reports. We call them pixel perfect reports in a lot of ways, or in a lot of circumstances. But those all looked backwards, and we could see what happened. But they didn't help us tell what was going to happen in the future, or we couldn't predict a future result necessarily. We could speculate, and we did, but that was very limited. So now what we have is tools that allow us to do the same thing, but look forward. And Akkio enables the team that you have now, the team that's already looking at those Tableau reports, already looking at those Power BI reports, creating them in some cases, understanding what they mean, to then create a model that can predict what the next thing is going to happen. What is this new data coming in that I haven't predicted yet? What's going to happen with that data? In our case, we're going to do lead scoring, but you could do employee churn. You could do procurement, right? How many different logistics of your deliveries, right? How many pizzas do I need to have delivered in a certain area? How many hot dogs do I need to have available in a certain floor of my stadium? Things like that. All right, so I mentioned a few of these already, but we'll go through a few just to jog your memory. Again, what I really want you to think about is, how can I use MLAI? And I'm sure you have some ideas. I'm sure others in your industry, yourself, you've talked about it with your peers. Maybe you've gone to a conference and they're talking about it. Lead scoring is a big one. Lifetime value of customer, right? What is the likelihood of this customer to spend X amount of dollars, depending on your vertical, depending on your industry? If it's high, maybe we want to spend some more time with that customer. If it's low, maybe we want to spend a little bit less time. We can tier customers in that way. Nothing wrong with that. It's completely appropriate. Pipeline, content performance, conversion likelihood, similar to lead scoring, but different. Customer churn is a big one for me. The reason I focus on that one is customer churn is, from a customer satisfaction standpoint, is bad for the customer and it's bad for the the company. When a customer leaves, it means they were unhappy. They signed up for the service with high hopes. They really wanted to get some value out of the service. If you leave your cell phone company, you leave disgruntled, unhappy, you're going hopefully to a better carrier, that kind of thing. And it's bad for the company because they lost a customer. So customer churn is a big one for me, near and dear to my heart. Trend identification, we can see, are we trending up or down? So this could go into a sales forecasting situation as well, which is up in the far right there. Okay, so plug in one of your ideas here. Feel free to put it in chat, ask questions about it. Can you do this? That's absolutely appropriate. Okay, so how does Akkio do it? Well, this is a great slide which shows exactly how we do it. We import your data, we pull it in, we connect to it. If it's Snowflake, we just connect directly to Snowflake. Salesforce, we connect directly to Snowflake. If you're doing CSV or something, you just pull it down, like this one's a historic conversion CSV in the background. So that's our data ingestion. Then we let you manipulate the data. One of the things that we spend a ton of time on is getting the data in the format or adding the right features. Maybe we add a couple columns together. Maybe we separate a couple of the columns because it was an aggregate of two others. You can do that all within the platform. I'll show you a little bit of that today. Maybe we want to explore the data, just see some correlations that are in there. Immediately, when you connect your data to Akkio, we'll give you correlations between the features that you give us. The features are just the columns. We'll say, well, these two columns are closely related. I'll show you that. So you get to explore it literally within minutes of uploading the data. It's the first thing that you see. Then we give you the ability to actually talk to the data, ask the system things about your data. We give you some suggestions, and I'll show you this, but you can say, hey, what's the average number of years that a customer is with this company? Things like that, you can just ask. Now, we could all do that in Excel, but as soon as you say the average number of years, then you say, well, what's the average number of years for people in this company from North Carolina? Something like that, over 40, anything like that is possible. And you can quickly do it with Akkio right now, within minutes of connecting your data. It's a big difference. And then of course, all that leads down the path to making an actual model that then you can predict against and say, well, here's everybody, here's their lifetime value, here's their lifetime spend, whatever it is. What's my likelihood of having lifetime spend down the road? So how we do it is we ingest, you can add data together, you can add more than one data source, you can merge them is what we call it. We can do cleansing, we can do manipulation, get rid of nulls, empty values, things like that. And then of course, we want to apply it to all the models in our system, find the best one that's most appropriate for your type of data, your situation, whether it's predicting or whether it's forecasting. And then we'll tell you that model and we'll give you insights about your data that you probably haven't seen before. In almost every case, there's some insight that we haven't seen before, at least one. All right, so I kind of went through this a little bit already, but I'll recap quickly. We take your raw data, any data source you can think of, yes, we can import it. If we don't have an import for it now, we'll create it. It's that simple, piece of cake. We prepare your data, we give you some insights about it, and we say, hey, here's some things that you might want to be concerned about, outliers, inliers, right? Missing values. We give you all that insight right away within the first few minutes. Then we let you visualize your data. You can ask questions about your data. Hey, chart it by this. Hey, show me the distribution of this in your data. You can literally do that in the platform. And I'm going to show you that. I'm actually going to give you access to do that in my data as well. Then we ask you to make a prediction or a forecast, right? So you can say, hey, tell me how likely Jason is to default on his loan. Tell me what lifetime spend is going to be for Jason over the next 2 years. Those are two different things. One's a prediction and one's a forecast. We can do both of those things depending on the type of data that you give us. That's our ML engine. Then we want to deploy that. It's great to have a model. And as a data scientist, we create models all the time. We throw them to development, and then they're like, well, what do I do with this? We have to make it available to the business. Akkio makes that really easy with one button click. I'll show you that. In fact, in the scenario today, I think it's right, Natasha. I got Google Sheets data just because it's easy and accessible, and then well, we can have everybody play with it and take it down when we need to. But we can take our Snowflake data, for instance, we can build a model off it. I deploy it, and then in my case, I'm pumping the results right back into another Google Sheet of current customers. So I'm using my Google Sheet of existing customers, which I pulled from Salesforce, HubSpot, and then I'm going to use it to predict against leads that came in that I don't have a score for yet. So the data is completely live. I could give you access to that Google Sheet, and you could say, well, let me just sort, and I'll find out the ones that are most likely. So that's our deployment. We can do that today. We also have an API you can integrate, of course, which is probably the most common way that people are interacting. Of course, we also give you a web page if you want to do a one-off. Just type things in and hit go. We'll give you a prediction score based on that. And I'll show you that too. In fact, I'll give you access to that in my model before we're done. And then finally, any model gets old. Tomorrow, this model I created is based on data from today. So it's old data, right? We have newer data day after day, month after month. Now, how new that data needs to be is up to your vertical and up to your industry. I'm not sure. But we monitor that model in production. We say, hey, you need to retrain. In my case, I have my model set to retrain on a daily basis. So when you update my Google Sheet with new leads that have been scored, right? We said it was a good lead, it was a bad lead, whatever. The model will retrain. The next lead you ask me to score will be scored based on that new information. So it'll be up to date, all within the platform. All right, so here's our first use case. This is the first, and I'm sure you'll find this interesting. So Ellipsis, if you haven't heard of it, they help with search engine optimization. They do marketing things, a whole bunch of things. But in this case, Alex was our contact there. They wanted to see the success of their clients' articles and how and why they were rising up in Google searches. It's awesome that the articles were doing really well, but if you can't understand why, you can't replicate it. And that's the first thing we did for Ellipsis. And you can see on the far right, it might be a little bit small there, but readability score had a 21.4% impact on whether that article bubbled to the top. What was the impact? If the readability was scored 0.92 to 1, it had a 10.35% impact on how high that article was in the rankings, right? So one of the things they should focus on immediately is readability score. Let's make sure that every article we put out has a high readability score, because if it falls below, if I look here, it falls below about 0.85, it starts to hurt the article. So it's very clear to them. This is the number one thing they should look at. Bounce rate, that makes perfect sense, right? Somebody hits the website, I'm not on the right website. They bounce. Okay, that has a big impact. Does the article have an infographic in it or not? Has a very large impact. And I'll show you how we can click on each one of these and get insights. This is a screenshot. Number of videos involved in the article, that has an impact, and it could be positive or negative. Sometimes too many videos has a negative impact. So these are the top fields. This is insights that Alex got within minutes of using our platform. Now, what do they actually do with this now? Let's take a look. Here's actually how it works. They generate some keywords. So when we worked with them, so it was a partnership. When we worked with them, we said, here's some keywords we need some help with. We think you can imagine for Akkio, right? It's ML, AI, machine learning, right? Things like that is what our keywords we thought. They went and looked at Google and said, well, what are the, and others, and said, what are the top ranking results for that kind of realm of ideas? And they came back with probably, I don't know exactly, but let's say 40 results. They took those results that were actuals from Google and they put those into an AI engine, an LLM, right? A lot like GPT-4, I imagine, and said, hey, give us some other suggestions. So in this case, they were just using, it's not Akkio, they were using, let's say, ChatGPT-4 for a thesaurus. So, hey, give me some keywords around this, like this, associated to this, right? Analogous to this. It came back with lots, hundreds of results. And they do this for all of their customers. So that's right here. They came up with a bunch of titles that says, well, based on what you told me, here's some other words you might want to try based on what the AI engine's doing. Well, it's expensive to try hundreds of results and just hope for the best. And frankly, the AI engines at LLMs have a tendency to hallucinate every once in a while. So there's some crazy ones in there too. So rather than having a human go through 1,000, 2,000 results and pick ones out and sort, that's when they use Akkio. They had already trained a model against what I just showed you and said, here are the keywords that worked for this vertical, for this type of customer. So they have a model that works. And then they throw these new words at and say, well, how likely are these other words to work? Here are the attributes of those words, length, size, there's all sorts of attributes to a keyword. And our model came back and said, here's the likelihood of each one of those words to be successful in your campaign. And they sort that essentially, and they use the top however much they can based on the amount of spend that the customer is willing to spend. Simple as that. So of course, all of this is automated. They do it through our API, and they're using the AI's API as well. And this happens within seconds, frankly. But this is how they generate the next step. Now, do they just go ahead and pump those out to Google and start using? No, they still have a human that takes a look, somebody like Natasha and Julia and our team on our marketing side takes a look at it and says, wait, do these make sense? Are these things that are within our realm? Of course, they still do that sort of thing. But that's how they get it narrowed down to a reasonable result based on the budget of the customer. How'd they do that before? Well, they did it slowly, right? And they did it with trial and order. So what they saw before when they were doing it manually and they were doing it by spending a lot more time and a lot more money is a 4-time improvement in content results, 3-time faster to rank. So that's a huge improvement, probably the most important one to me. And then 24-time faster with chat data prep. So it improved a couple areas. Number one, time. I already said that. And number two, cost. Every time I put out one of those keywords and it isn't successful, it's money that I've wasted. So for Ellipsis, that was huge. Okay. I said I had 2 examples and then we're going to get to the demo and I'm going to give you something you can use hands-on. And I promise that's true. Yeah. And if you're asking questions, please keep the questions going. We will get to them at the end. If there's something that really stands out, Natasha will interrupt me here and we'll dive in. So how did we use it? Lead scoring. And I'm going to show you this example. Again, it's not our data. I'm not going to use our customer data, of course, in front of you. All this data is anonymized, et cetera. But what we really do on a daily basis today, in fact, all of you have gone through this process, is we take all of the things we have in HubSpot and you guys fill out like a form that says, hey, what are you interested in? What are you trying to accomplish? That sort of thing. It comes out of that form that you fill out. We take that through Akkio and we say, well, based on their response, how likely are they to be a good lead? We know this because of our years of history in our CRM, right? We can use that. Akkio hasn't been around for an extremely long time, but we've been around long enough and had enough customers to say, here's what makes for a customer who's likely to sign up and be successful with the platform. Here's what that doesn't, and we will rank them. So depending on what they say, we'll come up with a score. In this case, you can see Zach was given, Zach's really one of our guys, an 80% score and said, here is one that we've grayed out, of course, that you should go ahead and contact, because what they put in, they were trying to accomplish, said it was 80% likely to match something we can do for them, that they were going to be successful with us. Here's one for Grant, 91% accuracy. And so you see what they said, they want to predict sales, inventory management, digital marketing campaigns, financial KPIs. Awesome. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's exactly some of the things that we do. That one's actually extremely good. And then we have one at the top here. I can't see what they said. Graphs. Let me move this here. Graphs and something else. I'm not sure what that was. And it's only a 50% or 49.3%. That one's on the border. We may have another conversation. Hey, what do you mean? What were you really trying to accomplish? That sort of thing. But that's how we can quickly do it. With the volume of leads that come in to a company like ours, it's important to be able to rank them based on what you're asking. We don't want to waste your time, nor ours, right? And I think you guys are in the same boat with your customers and your opportunities. So here's another just a quick example. What are you trying to accomplish with Akkio? Tell us. They fill out the form. If they say fixing my grammar, we can do it. Don't get me wrong. We could fix your grammar. We could help you tell you, we could score your grammar if you really wanted us to. Probably not a great use for us. We're going to be 2% on that. But if you want to do predictive analysis, yeah, that's part of what we do. We'd want to talk more about what type of predictive analysis, of course, but that's a 97% score. And then if you see here, I give you another example of what got assigned to Grant. So that's literally how we do it today. I mean, it's happening right now if you guys are filling out that form. So some of you are thinking, man, what could I put in there to give it a funny score? Go ahead and try. I'd love to see some of the funny responses in there, but we do really use that. All right, I said, I promise, let's look at how we did it. That took about 19 minutes. That wasn't too bad. Let's go see how we can do it. So I've already gone in here and uploaded my, in this case, my Google Sheet. I've attached it to my Google account. So you see here, it's called lead scoring demo. Again, it's demo data, no PI here at all. And what we're looking at is job title, years of experience, company size. Now, once I attach it, this happened literally within a minute. All these charts and graphs show up. And what we've done is we've really analyzed the data in that column to say, well, what's the distribution, what type of data it is, that sort of thing. But if I click on it, maybe location, I can see how it correlates to the other features, the other columns in your data set. So in this case, location has a high correlation, not too high actually, but a medium correlation with email, click rate, company size, et cetera. If I go to resource downloaded, high correlation with positive lead. Let's put a pin in that. Of course, I've looked at this data before, so I'm leading you somewhere. Attended webinar, 62% likelihood of being a positive lead. That's interesting to me. How about this? Years of experience. that has quite a distribution. I've got 0 years of experience and I've got 30 years of experience. Maybe for our industry, and this data set is for who knows what it's for, but maybe for our industry, we're only targeting maybe director and above. So we want to say, well, let's limit those to that have 7 years more experience. So let's say limit, or let's say something like this, just real language, only show rows that have years greater than 7. So I'll say 8 or more. So greater than 7. So in real time, 10,000 rows. In real time, what it's going to do is go through and say, well, how many rows are there that have 7 or less? It's actually going to take my result set and build some PHP or some Python code. And then we're going to apply that in a second once it gives me a preview of what it's actually going to do. I'll take a drink while I let that run. Natasha, any questions that we can answer while we let this run? I'm running this on my machine here, so it's going to take a little bit.
Yeah, we have a couple questions. There's one, someone who asked anonymously. We're going to hold that one to the end because I think we can have a longer answer for you on that one. But there's one from Mornay, I hope I'm saying that right, asking if we'll create Airtable data source in the future again. I know that we have some updates coming up, so I don't know if you have a good answer for that.
Say that one more time. Create your table data source for you again.
An Airtable data source in the future again.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely on the roadmap. I don't know where it's at exactly, but we can definitely get back to you. Right now, we've limited our integrations to a few, but we're constantly building more. I just don't know where Airtable's at, but of course, that's one that's very common. And if we don't have it now, certainly if it's something you say, well, I'm ready to sign up, I just don't have an Airtable integration that I can use, we'll create it for you quickly. Yeah, that goes for any data source, because I mean, we've had people say we want to connect to Oracle, things like that. Of course, those are all integrations that we'll build for you quickly. I'm going to use this to do Chat Explorer instead and see. So instead of exploring the data that way and filtering, which is great, let's see what we can do here and say something like this. It gives us some suggestions. Again, I can type things in here. What's the average email open rate? I'm just going to try that one. And one thing to note here while that's running, we don't send your data out to any other party, right? So there's never any time that your data leaves our system. What we do is we send the data about your data, the metadata, out to the other system. We actually ask it to write some Python code for us. We come back and then we execute that code. That's why you kind of saw writing lines of code in there. So in this case, the average email open rate is 0.0997. So that's interesting. What's the most common job title? Things like this we can ask about the data. I'm going to come back to this because I think there's some more insight. So the most common job title is manager. Awesome. Let's go to the predict step and see what we can do. So I've already hit the plus button, but under this plus button, we do a few things: predict and forecast. In this case, it's a predict, but if you wanted to forecast sales out in the future, this data set isn't really useful for that. Normally that would have a time value associated with it, either a daily, monthly, hourly, some sort of sales value that says, here's the sales that happened at this time, for instance, right? So a forecast would have that, but don't forget, of course, we can do that. For prediction, I'm going to select my training data set that I already had. I'm going to say, are they a positive lead or not? That's the value I want. Now, I've already done this, so it was cached for me, but this took under a minute to run, I promise you. And I'm looking at, is it a positive lead of 1, which is true, right? We have a 97.2% accuracy. If I look at the details of that, we can see true negatives, the ones that were not a positive lead. That's actually what I'm most concerned about, right? This is called the confusion matrix, these 4 values here. Normally it's a matrix, so it's in a box. So that's why it's called the confusion matrix. We lay it out this way because I think it's easier to understand. And frankly, I think everybody agrees with me. So true negatives, the ones that aren't a positive lead is what we're looking at here. We were 99% accurate. Now, how do we get to this value? Is if you remember, there was 10,000 rows up there. We took 80% of those. So we took 8,000 rows. We trained every single model that was in the system for this type of data. I'll show you those in just a second. Once we trained them, then we took the 20% that we didn't train and we acted like we didn't know whether it was a positive lead or not. And we tested all 20% of those against those models. Whichever model performed the best is the one that we picked for you. So you can always adjust this by adjusting your variables and adding new columns, removing columns, that kind of thing. If you think some things are weighing down, every once in a while, you'll have a variable that gives it away, right? A feature that just gives away the answer is 100% accurate. You can eliminate that one. And that way the model won't be biased or have information that it won't have at the time of prediction. So in this case, true negatives, 99%. I've eliminated the ones I don't want to talk to. I'm doing 80% accurate on the ones that are true positive. So these will come out as a score. Don't forget, this isn't a true false. It's how likely are they to be a 1. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. So when we get our results back, we're going to sort these by their likelihood to be a positive lead. And we're going to work our way down as salespeople from top to bottom against those leads. So this is extremely good results. And again, this is a sample data set that I downloaded off the web, so it has no impact on your business directly. But once you get your data in here, you would do the same thing. A few things for those of us that have been in the industry for a little while, or have been working with data science or analytics for a while. We do things like precision recall, F1 score, that sort of thing as well, if you want to dive into that. We also show you under show advanced model details, the other models that we used. So in this case, multi-layer neural network is the one that was chosen. We tell you why. The other ones, this is a different version of the same, and then linear regression are the other two, and here's why we didn't choose it. And you can compare those values if you wanted to. So top fields, this is, I said we get a lot of insights. And when I went to that ellipsis example, I showed you some of the insights that they used. Well, in this case, I kind of gave it away early on when we were exploring the data a little bit, but if they attended the webinar, they had a 25% more likelihood to become a positive lead. So that's why you're all here. No, total coincidence that I chose this data set and it's on a webinar. It just happened to be in here. But that makes a lot of sense, right? If you're interested enough to attend a webinar and pay attention to it, then you're probably a good lead. How many website visits? 40 website visits. Wow, that's a large number of website visits. If you think to yourself, did I visit Akkio's website 40 times? I don't know. I'm not sure that might be the case, but in this data set, that's how it is. So think about that yourself. I'd love to know if that's the case. In fact, let's explore that a little bit in a second. Responded to survey. If they responded to the survey, again, shows their interest, 12% impact. You're 12% more likely to be a positive lead if you responded. Days since last interaction. This one's interesting. And again, it's by impact score. So you see it go from top to bottom, 0 to 6. So they very recently talked to us. 6 to 12, again, not bad. But once it goes out past 12 days, it starts to go down. So if they haven't responded in 12 days, their lead score goes way down. You can see the action we can take on this, right? This is something I can give to Justin. I can give to Grant, right? And I can have them take action on this very quickly. So, okay. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on top factors, et cetera, because we're about at the bottom of the hour. So we have about 10 minutes left or so, and we want to have some questions. But again, we show a little more insights. If they responded to surveys 99% of them did when they were a positive lead. So we got to get them to respond to that survey. We've got to get them to attend webinar, those sort of things. Those are the key factors. Last thing I'll show you here is we segment your data into 3 different groups: likely 1, unlikely 1. So likely to be a positive lead, unlikely to be a positive lead, and then uncertain. I'm interested in the uncertain group. Right? What's in the middle there? What makes people kind of, you're right, they're in the middle. Resource, they download the resource. Their website visits were down from what we know now. Again, we just learned something about the data. 40 is that magic number. We know that. Days since last interaction, 11. That's right on the cusp, right? We know that too. And email open rate was below average because I just did that in Chat Explorer. So look at all we know about this data in the past 10 minutes or 15 minutes I've been exploring it. I can already say, well, yeah, of course, that makes perfect sense because I know the email open rate was 0.9, right? When we looked earlier. Sorry, 0.09, right? So yeah, so we can see how these buckets, and I can go after people. Maybe I want to filter by this, and I want to go after individuals or leads that fit in this bucket and see what I can do to turn the tide on them. Maybe I give this to my BDRs or my SDRs to focus on, right? As they're learning the ropes a little bit more. And I let my enterprise AEs focus on these. There's all sorts of decisions that can be made based on this information that we have. Okay. I said there was a couple things interesting though, real quick. I want to go back to website visits of 40. Let's go back and explore data a bit. I'm going to go to Chat Explorer, and this is where I'm going to give you something that you can play with. So if you're just here to say, hey, they were going to give me some data to play with, here's your chance. So I'm going to ask this question. What is the average website? Was it website visits? Yeah. What is the average website visits in the data set? I'll take a quick sip. Oh, so 25, much lower than 40, right? That's telling. That's something we could work on. That's something that's addressable. Natasha and Julie, I think you agree. That's something we could go after and say, what can we do to drive more engagement? Of course, we have Giorgio on the team as well that would help with this. So this is something that's directly impactful. Let me give you access to this. If I hit share in the upper right, I'm not going to change any. I'll add history here. I'm going to copy this guy. I can just hit copy, I suppose. Paste. I will put in chat. I think our host will help us put it in chat as well for you. It's a really long link. I apologize, but there you go. You're going to get access to this. If you want to scan it, go ahead and scan that with your phone. If you don't know how to do that, don't tell anybody. Just open up your camera, point it at it, and then click the yellow thing that shows up. And you can go directly here. Feel free to do it while we're talking. No problem at all. And this will give you, I'm going to give you one more of these too, but you can play with this data. You can get insights from this data right now if you want to. Ask it questions. See what works, what doesn't work. If you break it, let us know. I mean, try something silly. Have fun. So I'm going to move away from it. Let's wrap this up. The last thing we need to do, so we did our predictions, right? We play with our data. We explored a little bit. I actually went back and explored because I find that website visits thing, I found that pretty interesting. So still pretty good. If average is 35, that's still pretty good, right? So again, we're playing with data here. These are conversations we couldn't have. This would be very difficult to accomplish in most other tools, frankly. But here we go. The last thing I want to do is I want to deploy this. Now I'm going to click the plus button. I've already deployed it, but I'm going to click the plus button and show you what I did. There's a few ways we can deploy. Number one is our API. This is how you'd integrate it with your mobile app, your Salesforce, your HubSpot, your third-party application API. I'll show it to you real quick, but pretty much we give you a sample request. It's a curl request in this case, but it's just an API. So you can call it however you want. And your response is this. The important thing to note is the response comes back with positive lead, unlikely, positive lead, likely, right? And it gives you that score. So then you can sort it. So we're not going to use the API probably. Let's check out the web app. Try that. I'll give you access to this as well. So I'm going to select all of my features. And I'm going to update my deployment. I'm going to go to my live app. Again, I'll give you access to this too. Here we go, guys. I'm going to put it in the chat for you, and I'll give you the QR code in a minute. Here, let me show it to you now. Create your QR code. Let's see if it'll stay up there. So now what we can do is we can type in all of our features as if we were trying to predict against a real person. So I'll do consultant, years of experience, 23, company size, medium, industry. And I'll do this really quick. I'll do low website visits because we know, right? They downloaded. I'm going to say they didn't attend the webinar because, again, we know so much about this data already. It's been 15 minutes, and I think you guys know what these answers should be if I want to score somebody and lean them one way or the other. Email open rate. Well, we know that should be something like that. Email click rate. I didn't look at that one. Responded to survey. I'll say yes because I'll offset the webinar there a little bit. And day since interaction, I said, as long as I'll say 13, because I think as long as it was below 12, it was positive. So I've mixed some positive and negatives in there. But again, look how much we know about this data in the past 10 minutes. It's crazy. Okay, so I did too many things. Positive lead 100%. So I could start to affect this and say how many days, and I'll start going down and see if I can make it go in the other direction. But there we go. We're gonna have a few cases where I completely skew the data yourself. So I gave you the link. I think it's been posted to you. There you go. Please go play with that and see what you get for your results. Last thing I'm going to do is show you how I actually use it in my situation, which is I have this go out to a Google Sheet. Now, I choose my flow step, which is just from above. This is a different Google Sheet that's in Google Sheets, right? That doesn't have a score. I don't know if they're a positive lead or not. I ask it to run daily. I say, I'm going to run it now, run it on deploy. And if there's any discrepancy in my features, right, my fields, I'm going to map them. There isn't because the data was very close, but if there was, I can map them from field to field. I don't need to do that. I'm going to hit show preview. It's going to go score those. I think I had 500 in here or something that I hadn't scored, something like that. And it's going to show me AD preview here, and let's see what it does. So again, if I go to my Google Sheets, which you don't need to watch me do, this will be in there. And here's my score. It says, here's my probability of a positive lead is 0 and a positive lead is 1. So I have some that are 100% like I just showed you, because they have all good attributes, but it very quickly drops down, right? And then I can sort these, and this is how I'll work. If I only have time to work on 20 leads, I'm going to start at the top 20. If I only have time to work on 50, I'll start on the top 50. I can start to distribute this to my team. Okay, I think we're good on time, guys. Let's jump to questions. Natasha, is that all right?
I think we can hop into some questions. We've got some good ones here. I can start with the first one. So their company focuses on implementing more AI into their marketing efforts, which is amazing. And they use HubSpot and outsource their technical SEO to Jump Factor, which is a B2B marketing agency. Mm-hmm. So they're asking if Akkio can provide the services at the same level or better than Jump Factor. They just want some insights on how the two compare, or even if utilizing both at the same time would be beneficial.
Yeah, I've run into almost, not with Jump Factor. I don't know enough about them, and I would never comment on another company, whether they're good or bad. I assume they're awesome. But I've been in this situation with just 60 days ago. And so current customers using us to do that sort of thing, and just to double check what their SEO company, will call it, is doing. And what we found was just our insights, without even a prediction, just the insights they found, 10K of spend. And this was one of Justin's. We found 10K of spend on search keywords that were nonsensical. It made no sense. I'll try to make up an analogy. Let's say they were selling knives, like kitchen knives, right? There was keywords around samurai swords and throwing stars and things like that make no sense at all. That was the analogy. It isn't knives, just so we're clear. But that was the analogy, was have minutes in front of the customer. I'm not kidding, 3 minutes. We had the data in here, just their last 6 months of SEO. We found $10,000 worth of spend that was on keywords that were nonsensical to their business at all. So can we use it? Absolutely. Now what they've done, so that's great. That was looking in the past. We said, geez, 10,000 spends, let's stop spending on those. But the question is, what should we be using? What keywords should we be using? And that's where this wasn't ellipsis, but that's where the ellipsis example comes in. When you're working with SEO companies, let's ask them, how are you coming up with the new keywords? If they're not using something like Akkio based on your individual circumstance, it doesn't matter if they have an engine that's based on all keywords in the world. Google does that for us already. It matters for your circumstance. Excuse me, throwing stars is a great keyword if you're selling throwing stars or ninja apparel. I'm not really sure. But it's not a great keyword if you're selling kitchen knives, right? So it has to be a model for your circumstance. I think it sounds like, from what you told me, you have the data to build that model. You have the company that can implement SEO for you once you get the right keywords. Let's put the two together with Akkio and make them more impactful.
Great. So the next question is, for how many languages does this model work? And I believe this was in reference to the Chat Explorer and Chat Data Prep.
Yeah. I don't have a count of languages. Let me go back. I'm still sharing my screen. You have to learn how to type in English first, it turns out. But after you've, correct your English, I can ask questions. Okay, well, you can ask them in more than English. I know that for a fact, but it's not going to tell me. I don't know what language are you interested in? If you want to tell us, but multiple, I just don't know. Give it a shot. How about that? And let me know. Because the backend, this is built on GPT-4. Again, we don't send any of your data outside of Akkio. We just send the metadata, so the information about your data, how many rows there are, what type of data it is, what the titles of them are, that kind of thing. And then we ask it to write Python code for us. So it's very extensible, and it continues to grow. So the responses are very similar to what you'll see in GPT-4 as far as capabilities go, because we leverage it to write our Python code for us. So how can you ask questions? A multitude of language. I just don't know the list for you, but let us know which one, and we'll see. If we can't do it in that language, maybe there's something we can do about it.
They just asked specifically in German, and I believe GPT-4 definitely does.
Yeah. I'm in fact, I can't name a company, but we have people in Germany that are using this on their data sets. Have they done it in German in Explore? I can't say I've seen them do it myself, but I suspect they have, because I talk to them all the time, and they primarily speak German except for when they're on business calls with me, which I certainly appreciate.
Okay. Also, Spanish and French was also asked, and those are definitely.
Yeah, I can't tell you for sure firsthand, but let's give them a shot. I gave you the link. If that link isn't there, Chat Explorer here. Let's give that link again. Give it a shot and let us know. If it doesn't work, contact us and let's figure it out. But the languages the ones I'd be concerned about are the non-ANSI language, right? The ones that go from right to left and that sort of thing. And there's a multitude. Those are the ones I'd be, maybe Cyrillic, something like that might be questionable, but I'm just not sure.
Okay, another question in regards to privacy concerns, asking how our data is stored and used. And it says, I noticed that you don't have an AI policy on your site.
Okay. Yeah. Good point. We can address that. Data's transmitted and stored. It's encrypted in transit and while stored. It never leaves our ecosystem. That said, even if you connect to something like Salesforce or Snowflake or something like that, we still pull your data in memory into our system. But it is encrypted at that time and during transit. So, and we are SOC 2 compliant. If there's something else that's needed, though, let us know, because we're continuing to work on our compliance and things like that. We don't really have a big use case for being like credit card compliant and some of those other things. I forget the acronym right now, but we're continuing to work on that. If there's one that's specific to you, let's see what we can do.
Great. I see there's one more question in here, and it's, what role does Parquet play in this process?
Oh, it's one of our it's just one of our ingestion or so you can pull data in from there is really all it plays for us, right? Sorry, I kind of pulled it here, but if I go back to a new flow, say data, you can pull in a parquet file, whatever. I don't know if I'm saying it wrong or you are, but I always say parquet. It's not butter.
Tomato.
Yeah, parquet. So yeah, it's just a data store for us. Yeah.
Okay, and we have another question. We already use Power BI across our business. Is there an ability to use Power BI data sets as a source of data for Akkio?
Not yet. I'd be curious where your Power BI is pulling its data from, because it's probably a better place to pull from. But we're open to integrating with it. Power BI isn't necessarily a competitor of ours or anything like that. It does similar things, and I mention it because that's how we visualize stuff, and I've used it for years and years. But normally we would pull from the data source where Power BI is actually connected to. If you don't have access to that, then let's work on doing a Power BI integration. We don't have it yet, but again, we can add it to the list. We're doing it all the time. Basically, most of our integrations come from, and there's some that you don't see that are in progress or being used by customers because they've signed up and said, hey, I need this data source. So we build the integration for them.
Okay. They said, we already have data models set up in Power BI, so would prefer not to go back to the base data source.
Yeah, I was, as I paused, I thought that I'm like, you know what? You've already got these views created. You already got the data in the format you want it. It's already in tabular format, and you're slicing and dicing it, pivoting and all that stuff. I get it. Let's do it. Say that. How this would work is reach out to us. Let's see what the data is looking at. Let's look at timeline. We'll talk to John, who runs our product team, and we'll get it on the list and see what his timeline is for it. That's really how it works here.
Great. Let me say thank you. Also, we have a confirmation. It does work in German, so that's great. Okay, I think if there's any other questions, we can take those now. One more question. If there's any new tool features coming up that we can share.
Oh, geez, man alive. You guys gotta stay tuned. You can always reach out to us, of course, to stay on it. But the navigation that you saw now, we're modifying the nav to have more of a horizontal navigation, of course. I'm just gonna say, I can get in trouble for it later. Right now, I didn't do any charts or graphs in front of you, but ChatGPT can, Chat Explorer can create graphs for you, that sort of thing too. So if you're playing with that, ask it to create a chart. Ask it what charts it can create and do that for you. The biggest thing I'm excited about is when you first load your data, we show you this screen, and this is very useful. You see it's kind of going through it again. It's going to process the data. And we show you those charts and graphs here a little bit, that kind of thing. that's awesome. What we're going to do next is give you a dashboard and say, here's some stuff you should be interested about your data across data sets, multiple data sets, not just one of them like this. But if you notice, I've got multiple data sets up here. I've got lead scoring. I've got a housing data set. I've got some staffing needs. I've got some student success, which is, of course, I do demos, so mine's a wide variety. We're going to give you dashboards that span your data sets automatically, that you're allowed to modify. Of course, we'll do it automatically by giving you some insights based on what you've done with us, as well as just things that we see and things we've learned from your data. So that's my biggest feature. It's not going to replace, going back to the other question, it's not going to replace a Power BI, but it'll make it that you don't need to immediately use Power BI to do a lot of the things that you're doing pre-model and post-model. So that's my biggest thing I'm excited about, but tons of stuff coming out. Frankly, too much to mention. It's our team. We're an engineering heavy organization, of course. So we're constantly releasing new features.
Great. Okay. I think that was the end of all the questions that were asked in here.
Awesome. I'd say go to our YouTube channel. I think that's the best place to find out about the new features, because me and my team are recording the videos for that along with Jeff, right? All right. Thanks, Natasha. I'll let you wrap it up, but please play with that. I'm going to leave those links up for a while. I won't delete them intentionally. So if you're playing with the data, please put stuff in there. If something works, doesn't work, reach out, let us know. You have our contact information through the webinar. Please let us know, give us feedback. And hopefully this was edifying for you.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Again, if you'd like to sign up and play around, there is a free trial, so you can go and try with your own data or load some demo data sets in there to play around with how the features work. And thanks again for joining.